In order to see the register map and the wrapping circuit necessary for a PS2 core, we need to see how the processor actually sees the whole core. So in this figure in here, I'm showing you the whole core just wrapped with a box around it here. The processor sees only the signals outside of this box. So let's see, what does it see? So the processor sees the following. It can read this particular data, which is basically the data it receives, which is stores in the FIFO, the data it receives from the mouse or the keyboard. And of course, it knows if that buffer is empty or not. It can figure out the status of the transmit signal. And that's pretty much it from the processor perspective. So there are 3 signals that we can read. And technically, we can put them all in one register and just package them, and that's exactly what's happening here in offset number 1. So in offset number 1, we have the data is actually right here, which is the received data. The empty buffer is right here, and the last one here, which is the status of the transmission system, is just basically packed in here, and they're all like red. And they're all aligned to offset number 0. And because we only have one, so we would not need to do any multiplexing. On the other hand, let's see what the processor see when it actually wants to read something, okay, or to actually transmit something, not to write something. Like if it wants to send a command to the device. So the things that it can see is the following. First, it can actually send certain types of data, and then it can basically tell the transmitter that, hey, I need to send this. So these are the 2 write signals that we have. And we also have another write signal in here. And this write signal is just so that it advances the FIFO to the next data point. And as it turns out that these basically, because this is a different functionality than these 2 in here, so we're just going to talk first about the FIFO one. So the FIFO one, we're just going to put it here in offset 2. It's just basically if you write anything to offset number 2, what it will do, it will just assert this particular signal for 1 clock cycle, and I don't care what you write in here, so it's just a dummy write. And what it will do, it will just basically move the FIFO to the next step. Okay, these 2 signals, we can just think about them for a minute. It's basically the data you want to send, and you want to assert that you send it. So as it turns out, that you basically can send it in here, and whenever you're trying to write in offset number 1, it will just assert that, and that's how we can do it. And that's basically a register map that we will be using for this particular core. And of course, you might be wondering, what about the other 2 signals in here, the ones, the PS2D and the PS2C, and these are basically the PS2 bus that are connected to the mouse and the keyboard, not the processor. So the processor doesn't interact with them. It's just the transmitter and the receiver actually put the correct data or read the correct data from them. So let's take a look at the code very briefly in here just to see what would happen. So the code is pretty straightforward. So it have the it's a wrapping circuit, so it have the slot interface, basically the standard interface we have, the clock and the reset, and of course these external signals. And of course the external signals are in and out because they're bidirectional, and they utilize the tri-state buffer so that it has the open drain technology implemented. So what it does in here, it's just basically instantiate that top system just once, and it connects the write data directly to the PS2 the transmit data, the one that is here, and of course the read buffer is basically or this particular signal in here, the read is connected to some signal in here. So what we do is, because we have a couple of write, we need to do some decoding. So the decoding just happens in here. So we have a couple of things. If you are writing into offset number 1, we're just going to insert this particular signal, which we connected to the read PS2 packet, which is that one in here. We're just basically connected so that it utilizes that. What it does is just basically says, okay, if you are writing into offset number 2, okay, which is that one in here, if you're offset number 2, then you move it. Do I care about what's it writing? No, not really. I don't care what's it writing. Similarly in here, the write to the PS2 in here, it's just asserted whenever you're trying to write to offset number 1, and offset number 1 is actually that data in here. And that's pretty straightforward. The read, of course, is just these packed signals and a lot of zeros afterwards.